Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this online presentation. My name is Kyle Caswell. I am a counselor at the Employee Assistance Program at FSU. Today, what we're going to take a look at is a presentation about overcoming stress and anxiety during COVID-19. Specifically, we're going to look at some things that you can try as far as coping skills and just ways to manage the stress and anxiety that comes with this difficult time. So I thought we'd start out and take a look at defining stress. So as you can see at the top of the page here, we have a definition, a non-specific response of the body to a demand. And I feel like a lot of our demands have changed due to recent circumstances, and we're doing the best that we can to adjust to those demands. But I thought, as far as addressing this non-specific response piece of the definition, we would look at the stress signature and take a look at what stress looks like for us. So as we talk about what the stress signature is, I want you all to take a few minutes and just think about what stress looks like for you. So for some people, stress manifests itself more in a physical manner. Maybe that looks like tension in your neck, maybe tightness in your stomach. It could be headaches and so forth. Sometimes it manifests more in a mental capacity. And when I think mental, I really just think about the way that we think. And so if we're stressed, sometimes we tend to think more negatively and be a little bit more pessimistic about things. As far as emotional symptoms of stress, that's simply the feelings that come along with it. Maybe it's worry, maybe it's feelings of anxiousness or nervousness. And finally, behavioral types of symptoms when it comes to stress. Sometimes we don't engage in the healthiest behaviors when we are stressed. Sometimes people turn to drinking or eating junk food, things like that. So it's important to be aware of what your stress signature looks like, as it can increase your awareness. And then when you know that you are stressed, you can then turn to some coping skills that we will talk about here in just a few minutes. So when it comes to COVID-19, it is important to be able to differentiate between the things that we can control and things that we cannot control. So really quick, what is outside of our control is obviously the virus itself and when it will end. And that's certainly extremely frustrating and can be stress-inducing, but we do want to try and get to a place to where we can let go of that sort of thing and not let it stress us as much. Obviously, we cannot control when FSU faculty and staff are no longer working remotely, when classes are going to resume back on campus, and when our kids are going to be able to return to school as normal. It's important to focus on the things that we can control, though. So as you take a look at this list, and it's certainly not an exhaustive list, but it may look like these are some little things here. But I want to point out that although they seem like little things, these really are the big things at this time. They can be really impactful and can go a long way. So as far as these things that we can control, yes, we can control our response to what is going on, and certainly taking good care of ourselves and our families. That's a big one. And taking good care of ourselves shows itself in many ways. That's through washing our hands, practicing the physical or social distancing, eating healthy and nutritious meals, getting plenty of exercise, getting plenty of sleep, and just doing things that you enjoy. Maybe it's things like yoga or gardening or taking a walk, prayer, different things of that nature that can really help. And no, it certainly won't fix anything to engage in those types of habits, but it will help you to feel better. And if you feel better, you'll be able to deal with things maybe a little bit easier. So for those of you who are working remotely, and I imagine for those of you that are listening to this, it's probably a large majority of you that are working remotely at this time. I think it's important to develop some good routine around working from home, specifically in the morning before work, to go through that morning routine, whatever that may be for you. I think it can also be helpful to put on some work clothes that can help get you into work mode. Trying to structure your day as close as you can to how it normally is in the office, and maintaining those regular hours. Try to make your desk or your workspace at home as ergonomically correct as you can. If you take a look at the picture here that's on this slide, there's a few examples for how to make your space ergonomically correct. And no, it's not about making it completely perfect, but maybe you see some helpful hints on here as just some ways that you can improve upon your existing space. I think it's also helpful to check on your colleagues when you're able, and maintain those connections. That can be helpful throughout the day. And also developing that post-work routine to help unwind and get out of work mode a little bit. Typically, we have that commute, it's a chance to listen to some music or a podcast. So we don't really have that commute now that we are working from home. So it's tougher to unwind. So I mentioned earlier about putting on those work clothes in the morning as part of the morning routine. Maybe changing into some comfortable clothes could be something that you add into that post-work routine. Also, during your work days, I think it's going to be really important to remember to take some mini breaks. And this is just a few minutes. As you can see here, taking about 5 minutes to just try and refuel. And you can do that a number of different ways. Maybe it's just stretching a little bit, or partaking in meditation or mindfulness. I think just getting up away from your workspace and being able to walk around your house, walk up and down the hall, even if you're able to step outside for a few minutes, can be really helpful as a way of just having that change of scenery. So for those of you that aren't as familiar with mindfulness, I do want to go into that a little bit further. And if you all could just take a look at the picture that I have on this slide, I think this is a really good visual representation of what it means to be mindful. If you can see here, there's a person and their dog, and they've got thought bubbles over each other's heads. You can see what the person is thinking about, and that to me just looks like the person is thinking about 100 different things at once. And what the dog is thinking about is simply the present moment. And that is what it means to be mindful. So I like the caption here where it's asking, is your mind full or are you mindful? So that is something to keep in mind. It can be calming to be in the present moment. There's a number of ways that one can go about practicing mindfulness. There's a lot of techniques out there. We'll go over one in just a second, which is going to be called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. We'll go through that together, but a lot of people like to just take some deep breaths. That can help slow some things down. There's also some apps that are out there that I've found to be really helpful. If you go to the App Store, you search for Headspace or Calm, you'll see those come up. They've got some great ratings on the App Store. So that's just another option for you. Let's take a little closer look at this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. This is one of my favorite mindfulness exercises. I think it's pretty simple. And it's very versatile too. So let's all practice this for just a second. I will walk you through it, give you the instructions. So wherever you are right now, I want you to take a second and just look around your space that you're in. And I want you to pick out any 5 objects that you can see right now. It doesn't matter which 5, but just make a mental note of any 5 things that you can see. All right. So once you have those 5 things that you can see, I want you to now try and pick out 4 things that you can physically feel or touch at the current time. So for example, I can feel my feet on the floor. I can feel my arm on the armrest of this chair right now. So take a second, pick out 4 things that you can physically feel. Next, I'd like everyone to try and focus on 3 different things that you can hear right now. Try and pick out 3 different sounds. Next, try and focus on 2 different things that you can smell. Try and pick out a couple different smells if you can. And finally, what is 1 thing that you can taste? 1 thing you can taste. So as you've went through all these things here just in the last minute or so, you probably recognize that these are your 5 senses. And that can be helpful to focus on each one of your 5 senses in that it brings you into the present moment. hopefully that's where your focus and attention has been over the last couple minutes. The idea here is being that you are in the present and you're not thinking about anything else than what I was asking you to think about through your five senses for the last couple minutes. So hopefully you found that helpful. If it did seem helpful to you, that could be something that you practice throughout the day or even the evening. All right, moving on. Next slide is just a reminder about the importance of a healthy diet and trying to eat nutritious meals. I know everyone here knows what's healthy and what's not, but eating nutritious meals can certainly contribute to you feeling better and trying to just eat junk food in moderation. We're on the topic of mindfulness just a minute ago. I want to point out this picture here, 3 steps to more mindful eating and being present when you are eating. There's a few steps here to follow. That first step, just really reminding you about the importance of just eating when you're hungry and letting that hunger being what drives that decision to start eating, and not necessarily letting stress or just boredom be your motivation for wanting to get something to eat. The second one here is you take each bite, just trying to slow down and savor the flavor of the food that you're eating. And finally, being mindful of the way that you serve your food and trying to put it on a plate and sit down to eat instead of just trying to eat in such a hurry as you're on the go or something like that. So just some things to keep in mind when it comes to a healthy diet. Exercise is obviously really important. This is something that I feel like if you're exercising and doing physical activity, you almost can't help but feel a little bit better because it calms your body in a physical sense. I have a saying that I like to use a lot. It's called acting your way into feeling better. And when I say acting, I really mean partaking in physical activity to help yourself feel better. That goes along with your brain releasing endorphins, and it will help improve your mood. So there's a number of different exercises that one can engage in at home or while practicing the physical distancing. So whether that be aerobics, dance, yoga, just taking a walk. I've also come to understand that Planet Fitness is offering Facebook Live sessions in the evenings at 7 o'clock. And I think it's pretty cool. They're calling them work-ins instead of workouts because we're all inside these days. So that could be something to take a look at if you have Facebook. Maybe you could try one of those live Facebook sessions. I think taking a news break is something that could be helpful here and there as well. There is a fine line between staying informed and also oversaturating ourselves with the nature of COVID-19 in the news that is on the airwaves these days. It can be depressing. It is some things of a negative nature, and that can really wear on us over time. So I think it's good to remember to take some breaks every so often from the news. And I think that goes for social media as well. There can be some negative things that can wear on us just through social media, and just trying to remember to rely on as credible sources as possible to get our information. Time management. Now, I got to point out the cat here. I thought this was such a great picture. I have to point out that this cat is absolutely going to be practicing some physical distancing. This is not a public spa that he or she is in. This is certainly in his or her own home, practicing physical distancing. And the cat certainly looks comfortable. And that is very important to remember, to do things such as this. Having that me time for yourself outside of work is so important. There's a number of ways that one can go about this. I have a few examples here on this slide as you read through them. Maybe you see something that catches your eye that you'd like to practice, but spending some time with family or friends while practicing that physical distancing, maybe it's just through Zoom or Skype or something like that. It can be good to still have those connections. Maybe it's reading or gardening, being out in the yard. That can be relaxing as well. Just going for a drive. Practicing that mindfulness that we mentioned a few minutes ago, watching movies. As far as I know, I believe on Amazon, there are several movies that are available that were normally supposed to be in theaters, but they are just available online at this time. So that could be something to look into. Podcasts are increasingly popular. Finding a good podcast to subscribe to and listen to, obviously listening to music as well, and partaking in some outdoor recreational activities. Of course, all while practicing that physical distancing. So remember to put some time on your calendar for yourself as well. Sleep. Obviously, we all know that this is something that is really, really important. It certainly doesn't fix anything, but it does have an effect on your ability to cope with everything that is going on. So over here, there's a picture with 10 tips for better sleep for the World Sleep Society. I'll let you all skim through those. But as you do that, just as a reminder, I think it is a really good idea to establish that healthy evening routine. And that might include things like taking a hot bath. Maybe there's even some room in there for lighting some candles, reading a book. I think trying to limit the screen time is a good idea as well. That blue light can really negatively affect our ability to sleep. And maybe even playing some guided meditation like on one of those apps, Headspace or Calm. Those can be helpful too. There's a few other websites out there, sleepfoundation.org and sleep.org. If sleep is something that continues to be a concern for you and you try a lot of these things, it's still not really working, then I would just encourage you to talk with your primary care physician and see if any other course of action would be needed. Okay, so one of the last things that we're going to cover for this online presentation is the concept of rational thinking, or you see I also have learned optimism up here. I've heard it referred to a lot as learned optimism. So the picture that I have here on this slide, I like to call this the thinking triad. And as you can see, it talks about, or what I should say is, it shows the relationship amongst our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. And this can certainly move in a counterclockwise direction as far as what we think. It affects how we feel, and how we feel affects how we behave, and then how we behave then can reinforce those thoughts. So I usually like to illustrate this using more of a trivial everyday type of example of being stuck in traffic. I know there's not so much traffic out on the roads these days, but I'm sure we can probably all relate to that to some extent, being stuck in a lot of traffic. So if I were to be stuck in a traffic jam, and maybe what I'm thinking to myself is something along the lines of, this is the worst traffic ever. I am never going to get where I'm going. So if I'm thinking that way, then I'm wondering how am I going to feel? Probably not too good if that's what's going through my head on a loop. I'm probably feeling pretty bad, pretty angry at that time. So if I'm feeling angry and feeling bad, what are my behaviors going to look like as I'm in my vehicle? Probably not too good. I know we've probably seen some other drivers I guess exhibiting some road rage behaviors, or maybe even yelling at other drivers or honking the horn, things like that. Those are the behaviors that can come out, all stemming simply from a simple thought. But those thoughts are so powerful that they can have an effect on how we feel, and then how we feel affects how we behave. So you can see how this cycle can come into play with something like traffic. And it can also come into play when it comes to how we think about COVID-19. So before we dive into that, I just want to point out how everything that we've talked about thus far in this presentation is really about how we can change our behaviors so that our behaviors can positively affect our feelings. Notice there's no arrows on these connectors here. Behavior can certainly affect how we feel too. It can go this way also. So we've talked about behaviors such as practicing mindfulness and eating a good diet, and getting up and moving and doing some exercise. That certainly affects how we feel. But when we talk about changing the way that we think, we're really coming at it from this angle and how our thoughts can affect how we feel. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of how this can really come into play when it comes to our mindset through COVID-19. So here might be an example of a negative thought. Maybe you've had a thought like this or something similar, but we might say something to ourselves along the lines of, I'm stuck at home. And that might make you feel bad if that's a thought that is just playing on a loop through your head. So a way to reframe that thought, or a healthier way to reframe it might be something along the lines of, as you see here, I get to be safe in my home. I can stay active by starting projects, regularly exercising, and finding other ways to connect. So you can see how there's just a little bit more positive of a connotation to that thought, hence that term learned optimism that we talked about a little bit ago. So here's another example, an example of a negative thought. There's nothing I can do to stop it, with it being the virus. I'm afraid I may get sick. So a healthier way to reframe that: there are things that I can do to keep myself healthy, such as practicing physical distancing, washing my hands, staying home as directed, and using gloves or masks as needed. And finally, one more. There's too much uncertainty right now. So another way to look at that, while it's true that there is a lot of uncertainty, I need to remember that I continue to have control of my own actions and how I respond to what's happening. And that I find a sense of certainty. So again, remembering that healthy mindset. So that is everything that I have for you in this presentation. Just a quick recap: remembering to focus on what you can control, taking good care of ourselves and our families, and in doing that, taking mini breaks during the day, practicing that mindfulness to stay in the present, eating that healthy and nutritious meals, getting in some exercise on a regular basis. Remember to take that news break, managing our time so that we also have some me time sprinkled in when we get a chance, trying to get enough sleep, and of course trying to maintain that healthy mindset with the rational thinking and the learned optimism. And so one more thing, I had to throw this in here because I think we all need a chuckle, but if all else fails, here is another technique that you can implement. We'll take a look at these instructions. This is just a piece of paper that this picture is of, but number one, placing that on a firm surface. Follow direction in the circle, which is bang head here. Repeat step 2 as necessary or until unconscious. And number 4, if unconscious, see stress reduction activity. Of course, this is a joke. I hope everyone at least chuckled a little bit at my attempt at humor here towards the end. But I had to include this. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you're all to take some things away from this presentation that you feel like you may be able to implement into your daily lives as you continue working remotely. If you have any questions about anything that I have covered, or you want to talk a little bit more in depth, please do not hesitate to contact us at the Employee Assistance Program. That is our main phone number that is at the top of the page there, 850-644-2288. Whoever answers will be happy to help you. There's also some information on our website, eap.fsu.edu. And if you wanted to give us a call, you can set up an appointment to talk to one of us. There's 3 of us on staff. Dr. Jim Bramblett, he is our director. Dr. Melissa Bolin, she is our clinical coordinator. And myself, I have all of our email addresses listed there as well. You're welcome to give us a call, or you're certainly welcome to email us as well with any other questions. All right, well, I wanted to thank you all again so much for attending this online presentation. Again, I certainly hope that you're able to take something helpful away that you can implement. And please remember to stay safe and take good care of yourselves throughout COVID-19. Have a great week.